love you.
Hello, my name's Tom Walker. Welcome to That'll Be the Day. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking to some parents of disabled children who are concerned about proposed changes to the special educational needs and disabilities process. But before we hear from those worried parents, if you like the sound of the music at the start of this podcast, it's a track called That'll Be the Day by the Liverpool band The Vow. And as always, I'll be featuring a track by the band at the end of this podcast.
That'll be the day your open invitation comes my way. That'll be the day when all my...
Now, a couple of days ago, members of a group called Send National Crisis organised a series of protests to raise awareness of the government's proposed changes to the system which determines the support disabled children receive in schools. The government is currently consulting parents and other interested parties on the changes, and they have until May the 20th to express their views. I went along to the protest in Liverpool and started by talking to local organiser Mandy Smith. Welcome to That'll Be the Day.
Thank you very much for having me.
I know you're really busy, so and there's a protest going on over there as well, so apologies for pulling you away from it. Tell me why you're here.
We're here because we are very worried about our children's futures. The government are proposing in a white paper, which is a questionnaire and it gives lots of information, but essentially they're trying to take our children's legal rights to having support in school.
In what way? How would it change?
So currently, children with special educational needs may be assessed for an education, health and care assessment, which then may or may not lead to an education, health and care plan, an EHCP.
But for other children, it will be an ISP, an individual support plan.
That's right, and those individual support plans will not have any legal bearing at all. So when the support doesn't happen from that paper, then there's no legal, you can't challenge it.
Putting away children's rights.
I'm a parent and my child has special educational needs along with autism and a few other things, and he's currently in a mainstream school with support in his EHCP and he is thriving.
So he's getting the help he needs at the moment?
Absolutely, and without that support, which is what the government are suggesting, he would not get that support.
So under the new system, in other words, what would happen? Would he be left to flounder?
Yes, I'm pretty sure the schools would try their best, but unfortunately we would not be able to appeal this document or go to the council. It will quite literally be down to the schools.
When you speak to politicians, what do they say about it?
Our local politicians aren't too concerned because they say it won't come in for another 4 years. We have invited them all to be here today, but sadly none of them are here.
There are a lot of children in school these days who have EHCPs, and some people would say, and I think the government may be amongst them, that there are just too many and it costs too much. What would you say to them?
If they have a child who needed support, what would they do? You know, our children are important to us. They are our future. Our children have been assessed for these EHCPs and they've been assessed by professionals such as education psychologists. Are they saying the education psychologists are wrong?
There is some suspicion and cynicism, isn't there, rightly or wrongly, that there's a feeling that people play the system, I guess is what the question would be. What would you say to that?
I think they need to read the white paper, they need to listen to parents and carers. We have fought this system, and yes, we have won most of the cases, but that is because there's no accountability. There is nothing wrong with the current law. There just needs to be the right level of funding to the councils, to the schools, and accountability.
Looking to our right, there are quite a few people gathered here today. It's quite an impressive turnout for a Saturday morning. When you speak to those people who are battling with the music as we are, what are the common themes that emerge?
They're here because they are worried about their children. They are worried that the support that they fought for will go. and they won't have any legal rights to be able to challenge it. Parents are frightened.
What are you saying to people in relation to the consultation, which I believe ends a week on Monday, and I'm hastily trying to work that out? That's the 18th of May.
Yes, that's correct. So we need everyone to go onto the government website and find the white paper. It's a consultation, which basically means it's a list of questions asking for your voice. We need to be heard. Without that, then we may lose our rights.
From your point of view and the point of view of the people here, if the government don't listen to you, what is likely to happen to children with special needs in education in schools?
We've already got a lot of children who are out of school, and my fear, and a lot of the parents here today, their fear is that those numbers will increase. Where will our children go without support?
Do you feel overall then that disabled children are being abandoned to a certain extent?
Absolutely. We're going back 30, 40 years to the way it was. Our children matter.
Do you think children may even end up in special schools or even residential settings?
I'm not sure how to answer that question, but I know that if we don't have rights to make those challenges, then they are going to be left.
Well, Mandy, thanks very much for your time and for battling with the music and all the other extraneous noises.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
I want to start with something very simple. Our EHCP changed our lives.
Francesca Manca is one of the speakers at today's protest. She's battling with the music to make herself heard so that she can tell the gathering her story.
My son's school placement broke in mainstream when he was 6, and we had to really fight to get first a diagnosis and then an EHCP, which allowed us to fight to get the right school for him. We had to go to tribunal challenging the local authority decisions until we found a school that was absolutely perfect. This was long ago. Now my son is 17, but thanks to that EHCP, now he's thriving in college, studying to be a chef.
If you don't mind, can I ask you what his diagnosis was and what the EHCP did for him?
So the diagnosis was autism, ADHD and PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which was very early diagnosed then. Because of the nature of pathological demand avoidance, it means that when people perceive demands, their nervous system shuts down. So it's quite difficult to live in a world full of instructions and demands. And so the EHCP stated that if my son was ever to go back to school, he needed a series of adjustments. And with that in our hands, we could say, if the school can't provide it, we don't want the school.
Now, we're moving away from EHCPs to ISPs, individual support plans. What are your concerns about that?
My concern is that when there is, first of all, each child is different. Second, I don't think we have enough time to train all the teachers in the UK to be able to be fully inclusive and prepared to deal with special needs, even the ones that people call high functioning. People need support, and the other concern is we wouldn't have anything to hang on to if the school is not providing the support. We can't legally challenge it, and that will make it so difficult for so many families.
I've just actually moved away from the gathering slightly because it's getting a little bit noisy. Francesca is still with me. From a practical point of view, what would have happened to your son if he'd had to go through the ISP process as opposed to the EHCP?
So I'll give you a practical example. When we got the diagnosis and the EHCP, the local authority named the school a specialist setting, and the specialist setting said, we don't really care that your son doesn't want to go to school. What we'll do is we'll send a taxi, and if he doesn't want in the taxi, we'll make him. And without an EHCP, that's clearly stated, the school needs to work around the child's needs, we couldn't have done anything. We could have just said no thank you, but then we couldn't have gone to tribunal. And also with the HCP, now when the tribunal states something, the family can appeal. Without that, the tribunal will only be able to say, we think this placement is correct, we think this placement is not correct, but they won't be able to say, we're going to name this school like it happened to us.
So it will dilute the whole process, is what you're saying?
Yes, and it will make it more difficult for families to have something to hold on to legally, to say this is the support they need, rather than having to listen to schools saying we don't do things this way.
As a family, how isolated did you feel going through the process?
Very. I'm Italian, and my husband's family was living in Australia then, so we were really alone, and having a child with special needs often means that your friends with children who are neurotypical or non-disabled don't understand. It's really difficult for them to understand what it is to have a child with special needs. So we were super isolated, and not even having that support would have been impossible.
Now, one of the people at this gathering actually talking to members of the public is Michelle Hughes from St Helens. Her daughter is now 22 but went through mainstream primary and a specialist school at secondary and had an education, health and care plan.
So she attended mainstream primary school and had a statement of special educational needs, which then transferred onto an AHCP, and then she did actually attend specialist school from year 7 to year 13. She really benefited from having that level of support, smaller class sizes, intervention from speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and also for her mental health support. And also a big thing is peers. She was always, the other children in mainstream were good with her, but she was never part of her peers, whereas in specialist school for the first time she was one of them. She felt included, and she's now actually, as a result of that, attending a Russell Group University and living an independent life, something that I believe that she's achieved through that level of support she's had through school.
You have a grandson in school who has special needs, and you're concerned that EHCPs are going to be replaced by ISPs, which are individual support plans. Tell me why you're concerned.
I'm concerned because an ISP, the only statutory, according to the consultation documents, the only statutory part of that is actually to draft the ISP. The actual duty to secure the provision in it, or the ability to appeal what's in it, that's what's going to be removed. So in effect, you're going to be pitting parents against schools, whereas at the moment the right of redress is via the local authority or via the tribunal. So in my opinion, you're kind of really creating potentially conflict, and also schools are under immense pressure already. Senkos, some of them have teaching responsibilities. They have loads of children who they've got to do referral forms, annual reviews, meetings, and you're putting more work on Senkos. This for me is all about reducing the costs, but the underlying problem really is not a problem of overspending, it's a problem of underfunding. We've had a decade of austerity, and we shouldn't be talking about the demand, we should be talking about the need. It's all about how things are being framed, and that's what my concern is.
What are your fears specifically for your grandson? What do you think could happen to him if he loses his right to an EHCP and goes on an ISP, individual support plan?
Well, potentially if he was in a mainstream placement, he's autistic with a PDA profile, he does become dysregulated, he needs small class sizes, he needs staff who are very experienced, and in a mainstream school without that legal rights to provision in there, he's likely to become disengaged by education, not in possible education, excluded. He was actually excluded from school nursery, mainstream school nursery, when he was only 3 years of age, and then the impact of that on the wider family is that my daughter and her husband, who both work full time, could potentially then, my daughter would have to leave work to be at home to look after him, or constant phone calls to come into school and pick him up, which at the moment he goes to school and he's happy, he's settled, and he's receiving the education that he deserves and that he's entitled to. We want our children to become independent adults, and an EHCP for some children enables them to do that. For children who have more complex needs, an EHCP enables them to be healthy and to thrive and achieve their aspirations.
The government would say that providing funding for special education needs disabilities has gone through the roof and that something needs to be done. What would you say to that?
I'd say, well, everything else has gone through the roof. Again, like I say, for me, it's not overspending, it's underfunding. And so when we talk about costs, then it's how it's framed. And I think pitting people with vulnerable people and people with little against each other is not the right way.
You've been talking to members of the public as they've gone past, and what have they been saying, and have you had much support?
We've had loads of support. I think my biggest concerns are that I've spoken to several families who have very obviously disabled children who were not even aware of these changes to the law. So I'm really concerned about the fact that people aren't aware really of what's happening, and these are the people that it's going to impact. Other people who are not necessarily affected by this, they don't have any currently have any children with disabilities, were also really supportive, and again they kind of shared that they thought it was like the wider context that these children, the most vulnerable in society, these are not who we should be targeting. Our children are the canaries in the mine, and we need to make sure that these children are protected.
I don't know who listens to these podcasts, whether senior politicians do, I've no idea, probably not, but let's hope they do. If they are, what would you say to them?
I'd say that we should be always looking after our most vulnerable disabled children, disabled adults, and disabled children are probably the most vulnerable. We should be trying to promote inclusion, and the changes don't promote inclusion.
So thanks very much to Mandy, Francesca and Michelle for setting out so clearly their concerns. So what did the government have to say? Well, I had a look at their website and found the consultation document. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it all, but I just thought I'd read some of it to you to give you an idea of how they're responding to those concerns. They say, today we call time on a system that has let children and their families down for far too long. Today we take responsibility for changing the system, for enabling and empowering not just some, but all of our children. We will invest up front in providing support early, both through our brilliant Best Start family hubs and early education providers, and empowering schools and colleges to deliver higher quality and more timely support where and when children need it. We will make it easier to get support without needing to go through processes, and protect and enhance education, health and care plans for children with the most complex needs, bringing in new national inclusion standards and expectations for quality and evidence. We make these changes because we have a moral mission to do our very best by each and every child in our country. Phew, after all that, I think we're all in need of some really good music. This is Indie Nile by The Vow.
Who'd have thought that I'd ever stray or get it on like Jackie Dupre? From the bars of Macbeth and all the way to Memphis, I've been enraged by every machine on the road to improbable dreams. I had a snake-eyed low in self-esteem to drive me, and I held the world in my hands, but it slipped through my fingers and thumbs. And I am a victim of fame. Mother Nature, you play a mean game. In denial, in denial, in denial. Just like the Smiths at the cemetery gates. Lordy, Lord, it's already too late to go and sell my soul to Satan at the crossroads. Every other troubled boy would want to break away and destroy, and give a learned man a dissertation field day. And I had the world at my feet, but it rolled away down nowhere street. And I am a victim of fame. Lady Luck, you've undone me again. In denial, in denial, in denial. dude has Sigmund Freud and earache. And I held the world in my hands, but it slipped through my fingers and thumbs. Yes, I am a victim of fame. Mother Nature, you play her